Hello everyone, welcome to another Versity with me, Brad Nelson, and that is Todd Anderson. And this week we are playing Legacy.
Yay!
Yeah, right before the GP. Actually, a lot of you probably are going to be doing grinders today.
Is that?
GP New Jersey.
Sponsored by StarCityGames.com.
Run by,
Trademark.
not sponsored.
That's the same thing.
I don't think that's how it works.
I don't know.
That's not how it works.
Okay.
But there's going to be an awesome GP that we're both at already.
Yeah.
And I'm playing an awesome deck, at least. Maybe you saw it last week because of time travel, but we're playing Legacy all week this week. Lots of Legacy content. And to top it all off, we're playing Blue-Red Delver versus Blue-White-Red Jeskai Control. I have such a tough time saying Jeskai and Sultai in Legacy. I just feel like it's too old for it.
Yeah. I mean, like, all these names are ingrained in people. Like, the first time I saw Teamer Delver,
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is.
And we'll get used to it. But yeah, let's take a look at this awesome deck that I have fallen in love with. As you can see, this deck does not have many win conditions.
No, it does not.
Nope, we've got a Batterskull, 2 Stoneforge, and 3 Jace as the only ways to really win the game. And this 1 Academy Ruins that you have to, you know, not put into play against Wasteland decks. Make sure that it just you get the activation off of it.
Yeah.
But the thing that this deck is trying to do is actually attack the metagame in a very interesting way. As we see, like, all these Delver decks popping up that are hyper aggressive, all about Treasure Cruise, this deck does the same thing, right? Like, it has Ponders and Brainstorms and even Preordain, but it uses Dig Through Time as opposed to Treasure Cruise. Now, you do have 2 copies, but you are delving a lot in this deck. And the strategy is that if they're going to be cantripping a lot, they're not going to be putting the amount of pressure that a normal Delver deck does.
Yeah.
So you still have a lot of answers to a lot of their threats.
Yeah, they have a really low threat density, usually just like 12 creatures, and they're going to be spending most of their cantrips early to make like Monsters Twister bigger, to make tokens off of Young Pyromancer, and to fill up their graveyard for Treasure Cruise. And a lot of times what that's going to do is, you know, they don't really want to cantrip into threats when they already have a threat in play. They want to cantrip into more cantrips so that they continue to fill their graveyard and continue to, you know, make their guys bigger and make more 1/1s. But like, this deck can take advantage of that by, once they've kind of run out of steam, you just like kill 2 creatures with like Engineer Explosives or Swords and Bolt. And then they're just kind of out of gas. And you have the same kind of stuff they do with Dig and Treasure Cruise to refuel, but you're refueling for answers. And you have way more answers than they have threats because you have Counterspell, Force of Will, and you know, and these 6 removal spells, as well as the 2 Power Blasts and the Explosives.
Yeah, and speaking of Counterspell, the other evolution of this format is with the Delver decks being more velocity-based as opposed to just tempo-based, you see a lot of the other decks getting a little softer to counter magic. Like, they are just adapting in a way that Counterspell's a good card again. It's not the greatest card when you're on the draw against a Blue-Red Delver deck, but the rest of the deck is designed to be able to just be a little bit slower than that deck, but that also punishes them because you have a couple more lands in your deck. Like, you're only playing 20, and you are kind of a control deck, but in a new Legacy format where things are a little bit weird, I think that this deck just attacks in a very beautiful way.
Yeah, I'm falling in love with this deck too. Like, we talked about this last night for a couple hours, and we didn't play much with it again, or I didn't play much with it or against it, but you played a lot with it. What was your initial take on it?
I made a lot of mistakes and won a lot of matches.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, my biggest concerns with this deck, and this is something we talked about last night, and I just want to present them here as well, is that the 6 Delve cards seems like a little too much when, like, you only have 9 fetches, and a lot of times, like, you're going to be trying to slow down the game, like holding up mana for Counterspell, or maybe like Spell Pierce or whatever, and just not really filling up your graveyard as aggressively as these Delver decks. But since the games are going to go longer because you have so much removal and counter magic, usually you're going to be able to get to this spot. But the thing that I like the most is that we do have access to 5 pitch effects with 4 Forceful and a Misdirection. And if we draw like 2 copies of Dig Through Time or Treasure Cruise, it's okay to pitch 1. Because normally you're only going to get off like 1 Dig Through Time and exile most of your graveyard. And then you're going to take like 3 or 4 more turns before you can cast another one.
2.
Well, sure. But I'm just saying,
that's honestly how this deck operates. That's how these Delve cards, that's why they're busted. The first one's usually on turn 3 or 4, but then once the engine starts, every other turn you're doing this because you're just cracking and interacting and you're building your mana base. So the first one costs 2, but the second one costs 4, and the third one costs 2 again. Like, that's just how this deck really functions. These numbers are great. I like having this many. Yeah, you can pitch them, but they chain off each other really, really well because like the first one, like even if you empty your yard, it ends up making the next one shrink by 1 already.
Yeah.
And now you have more cards to exhaust the next turn, untap, do it again. So I'm a big fan of this deck, and we'll see it in action against Blue Red Delver here shortly. Let's just quick take a look at the sideboard because the sideboard is also fairly unique.
Yeah.
All right, so as you can see the sideboard, there's a lot of copies of cards that don't normally see sideboard play, like 3 Vanillion clicks in the sideboard.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Vanillion Click see a reasonable amount of sideboard play as like a one-of in Delver decks when the games go longer, or like, you know, you board in a lot of disruption against combo decks. And I think that this deck is similar in that vein where we're bringing in like 3 Flusterstorms against most of the combo decks, but we also need a threat that can kill them in the meantime. And we want to be able to hold up like Counterspell, Spell Pierce, things like that, and Flusterstorm now. And having a flash threat that can disrupt them or cycle one of your dead cards out of your hand or whatever is actually pretty awesome. And he has a pretty reasonable clock backed up behind him. Oh,
yeah, and with so much counter magic after sideboard, like you just get rid of the Stoneforge package and just become a blue deck with 3 of these and Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time. It works great, along with 2 more Power Blasts to finish off all 4 since we are in that blue metagame right now.
Yep.
2 Grafdigger's Cage as your anti-graveyard. I don't know if this card is the best one. I think it is. Tormod's Crypt could be good, but this one just shuts down elves and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, Cage has so much value outside of just affecting graveyards. Like all these veteran explorer decks that play Green Sun Zenith that shuts those down. I've even seen like I've played against Breaking Pod like 2 or 3 times in the last 4 opens I played against, which is kind of strange. But at the same time, there's still like there's like all sorts of weird stuff going on in Legacy that having a anti-graveyard card as versatile as Grafdigger's Cage and something that's so powerful against elves, which is probably not a fantastic matchup to be completely honest, simply because their Glimpse of Nature turns are the ones that you have to be.
So many counters.
We have so many counters, but at the same time, like they after board they'll have discard, they'll have like natural order that you have to worry about. But the fact that Grafdigger's Cage shuts down Zenith and natural order, and those are 2 of their best cards against you. Then if we go Grafdigger's Cage into like Counterspell or Glimpse Pyroclasm, the game's over.
Yep.
And Cage is just awesome in that regard.
Speaking of Pyroclasm, it's one of the best cards against these Delver decks now. They just don't have the true names or the Tarmogoyfs.
Yep.
They're just getting wiped by Pyroclasms, and we have a Hydroblast to counter their Pyroblasts.
Yeah, we also have Hydroblast because Burn Deck is a real thing.
I mean, it's just an advantage. Like, Burn decks are getting worse and worse because Hydroblast is getting more utility everywhere else.
Yeah, I really like Hydroblast in combination with a lot of counter spells against things like Sneak and Show as well, since Sneak Attack is one of the better cards against you. And when you bring in the combo of like Flusterstorm and Hydroblast, it's kind of hard for them to resolve Show and Tell and kind of hard for them to resolve Sneak Attack as well. And
yeah, because you can Hydroblast, then they force, then you Flusterstorm the force, and then they have to find another counterspell.
I would imagine that a lot of Show and Tell decks are also bringing in things like Through the Breach and maybe even Blood Moon against you too, if they see mono dual lands. And luckily your deck is built so that it can play around Blood Moon with the 5 basic lands as well, like very similar to the Miracles decks played by like Joe Lissette and people like that. So
awesome. I hope you guys like this video, but more importantly, I hope you guys like the content that we'll be producing in New Jersey this weekend when Cedric, Matthias, and Peace Sully bring you 2 days of Legacy awesome coverage. I think that's
Brad's real bad at plugging stuff.
I can plug in my phone charger though.
Stay tuned for the first video.